I never thought I'd be the guy to get blindsided like this, but here I am. My name's Mark, and I've been married to Lisa for about 4 years now. We met a few years before that, and honestly, I thought we had a pretty solid relationship, at least from my side. Lisa was always a bit of a bitch, honestly. She's the type of woman who's got a sharp tongue, loves throwing around insults when she's upset, but somehow I still thought that was just her personality, not a sign of anything deeper. Still, I always tried to brush it off, tell myself she just liked to keep me on my toes. Things started to change a few months ago, though. It was subtle at first, little things that didn't add up. I noticed her phone buzzing constantly, and sometimes I'd catch her deleting messages, which was weird because she used to be pretty open about her phone. She'd get defensive if I asked who she was texting, saying it was just her friends or her sister. Whenever I tried to get her to talk about what she was doing after work or on weekends, she'd change the subject quick or brush me off with a snide remark. I chalked it up to her being stressed, maybe tired of the immigration process we were fighting through. But then I started noticing more. She'd come home late more often, smelling different, like she'd been somewhere she shouldn't. She'd get defensive if I asked where she'd been, say she was at the gym or running errands. I even found lipstick on her collar once, nothing overt but enough to make me suspicious. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I figured maybe she was just having a rough patch or some kind of secret life, but I didn't want to believe it. I loved her after all, and I didn't want to think she'd cheat on me. Then came the real wake-up call. I got a call from a friend I'd trusted, someone I'd known for years. He told me he'd seen Lisa with a man, no, not just with a man, with her attorney. His name's David, and apparently they'd been seen together more than once, acting awfully cozy. My stomach dropped. My first instinct was denial. No way, Lisa would never cheat on me. But then I remembered how she'd lied about her meetings, about where she was going. She'd been lying all along, and that's when I started to put the pieces together. I had this gut feeling that what I was hearing was true, that she'd been sneaking around behind my back, especially with someone who was supposed to be helping us with my citizenship. It's crazy because I was so focused on the fight for my green card, the paperwork, the deadlines, the endless interviews, while she was busy plotting her own betrayal. I'd suspected from time to time that she might be seeing someone else, but I didn't want to face it. I kept telling myself she was just stressed or maybe involved in some side project. But then that call from my friend changed everything. It was like a punch to the stomach, realizing that the woman I loved, the woman I'd trusted with my future, had been screwing someone else, especially someone involved in the mess we were in with immigration. The worst part. I remember sitting there just numb, trying to process what I'd just been told. My mind kept circling around the idea that she'd been lying to me this entire time, that she'd been using me while secretly sneaking around with David. It was like I was living in some bad movie, only this was real. How could she do that? How could she have the audacity to betray me so blatantly, especially now? I've been working my ass off to get my green card, trusting her as my wife, and she's out there with her attorney, someone who should have been helping us, instead helping herself. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew I had to be careful. I didn't want to blow up everything without proof. Still, the evidence was piling up, and I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I felt this bubbling mix of anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal. It was like I'd been hit from every side. I'd fought so hard for my future here, and it turns out she'd been playing her own game all along. That's when I decided I couldn't let it go on. I had to find out the truth, no matter what it cost me. I remember the night I finally decided to confront her. I'd been gathering bits and pieces for weeks, text messages, subtle clues, overheard snippets that didn't add up. But that night I was determined to get some answers. I waited until she was out of the house, claiming she was meeting her sister. I knew she wouldn't be able to resist checking her phone, especially since she always kept it close. I sneaked into her purse, feeling like a damn thief, and started scrolling. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. There were countless texts between her and David, flirty, suggestive, downright filthy at times. I read messages where she called him daddy, and he responded with "can't wait to see you again." They talked about meeting up, about sex, about how much she loved the thrill of sneaking around. I even found a calendar she kept, marking days she'd see him, times she'd meet him after work. My blood turned cold. She'd been lying to me so brazenly, right under my nose. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to come home early from work the next day just to catch her in the act. I wanted to see what was really going on, face to face. I parked a little down the street so I could see if her car was there. And sure enough, after waiting a little, I saw her car pull into the driveway around 8 p.m. Heart pounding, I got out of my car and crept in through the back door. I wanted to catch her red-handed. What I found when I walked inside was shocking. The living room was dark, but I could hear muffled voices. I crept closer and peeked around the corner. There she was in our bed with David. They were deep in what looked like sex, her moaning, him talking dirty to her. I froze. Everything in me wanted to burst out, to scream, to drag her away. Instead, I just watched, stunned, feeling the heat of betrayal burn through my chest. I felt my stomach turn, and for a second I thought I might be sick, but I held it together. I recorded it all on my phone just to have undeniable proof. She was so caught up in her pleasure she didn't even notice I was there. That moment, I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak I'd never experienced before. How could she do this? How could she sleep with someone who was supposed to be helping us and lie about everything? This wasn't just cheating, this was sabotage. She'd been sabotaging my application, working with David behind my back to keep me from getting my green card. When she finally got up and started getting dressed, I quietly slipped out and went straight to the bedroom. I left her a note on the pillow, simple, cold, just "we need to talk." I knew I couldn't let her deny it now. The evidence was too damning and I had it all on video. I felt numb, like my world was collapsing. I'd always trusted her, believed in her, and now I saw her for who she truly was, a manipulative, lying bitch. The next morning I waited until she left for work again. I sat there, heart racing, trying to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to just pack up and leave, walk away from the whole nightmare. But another part, angrier, more vengeful, wanted to confront her head-on. I knew I had to face her, to hear her lies and see how she'd spin it. I couldn't just walk away, not without telling her exactly what I knew. When she came home that evening, I was waiting in the living room, my phone recording. She looked surprised, maybe even a little nervous. I didn't waste any time. I showed her the video, the text messages, the calendar. Her eyes widened, then narrowed into that bitchy glare she always put on when she was trying to lie her way out of trouble. She started with the usual bullshit: "You're overreacting. It's not what it looks like. He's just helping me with my visa," and so on. I just stared at her, feeling a strange mix of disgust and disappointment. My voice was calm but cold. I told her I knew everything, that I'd been betrayed from the start, and that her lies weren't going to save her this time. She called me crazy, said I was paranoid, and then with a bitchy smirk she spat, "You're just jealous. Jealous because I'm still beautiful and you're too blind to see what's really going on." That was the moment I realized how much she hated me, how much she'd been using me. It was like all this time, she'd just been waiting for the right moment to screw me over completely. I felt like I'd been hit with a sledgehammer. My stomach was still aching from the shock, but I also felt a cold resolve settling in. I knew I couldn't stay with her after that. I didn't want to be with someone who could lie and cheat so blatantly, someone who'd sabotage my future and then lie about it. I told her to pack her stuff, that I was done, and that I didn't want to see her again. She screamed, called me all sorts of names, but I just kept recording. I wanted to keep evidence in case she tried to spin things later. I felt anger, betrayal, heartbreak, everything all at once. I knew this was the end of us, and honestly I felt a strange sense of relief. I'd been living in her shadow, trying to fix what was broken, and all along she was just playing me. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. The aftermath hit me like a freight train. I still remember that night vividly. I sat alone in the living room, the recordings I made playing on repeat in my mind. Her voice, her lies, the way she looked at me with that fake bitchy smirk. I couldn't believe I'd been so stupid for so long. How many times had I ignored the signs? How many nights had I come home late, feeling like something was off but dismissing it because I loved her? That love had turned into a bitter taste in my mouth, and I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I was furious with myself for not seeing it sooner. I kept thinking about all those little moments I brushed aside, the late nights, the secretive texts, her dismissive attitude whenever I asked about her day. Every time I caught her in a lie, I told myself I was imagining things. But now, looking back, I knew I'd ignored the signs because I was too damn blind, too damn in love to admit the truth. That realization made me feel sick, but it also pushed me toward making a decision I knew I had to stick with. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat there, staring at the screen, replaying the video evidence, feeling a mixture of rage and heartbreak swirling inside me. I felt like I'd lost everything, my trust, my love, my future in this country, all because of Lisa's selfishness and her lascivious games. It was a blow I never thought I'd take, especially from someone I'd trusted with my life. I kept asking myself how I could have been so naive, so stupid to think she was genuinely committed to us. The next day, I started planning my next move. I knew I couldn't just confront her again and expect her to be honest. She was a master manipulator, always spinning stories, lying, pretending to be the victim. I had to be smart. I reached out to a lawyer I'd been recommended, someone who specialized in immigration cases and knew all about the kind of sabotage I was dealing with. I wanted to understand what damage Lisa could have done, what she'd been working on behind my back. I also wanted to get my ducks in a row for what was coming next. While I was at the lawyer's office, I learned some things that made my stomach turn even more. Lisa's affair with David wasn't just about cheating. She'd been actively working with him to sabotage my green card application. They devised plans, submitted false documents, probably even lied to immigration officials. It was sabotage on a whole new level. I was told that if this came out in court, her actions could seriously jeopardize her own chances, and I'd have grounds for legal action against her for fraud and conspiracy. The realization stung. It meant that her cheating wasn't just a betrayal of me, but a betrayal of everything we'd worked for. It was clear that her plan was to keep me distracted, to keep me believing she was innocent while she plotted. All the false smiles, the lies about her meeting her sister, the late nights at the gym, all part of her cover. I started to see this wasn't just about her being a bitch or her wanting some affair on the side. It was about her actively working to destroy my future here. That made everything more personal, more brutal. She'd been sabotaging my life, and I felt a deep, burning anger that I didn't know I had in me. I decided I had to confront her again, but this time with all the facts in hand. I couldn't let her deny or spin her way out of it. I knew she'd try to manipulate me again, call me paranoid or jealous. But I also knew I had proof. Proof that she'd been lying about everything, and proof that she'd been working with David in this sick conspiracy. When I told her I knew the truth, she exploded. Her face twisted into this arrogant, bitchy sneer, and she started with her usual gaslighting, saying I was crazy, that I was imagining things, that I was the one with the problem. But I didn't let her get away with it. I laid out every piece of evidence I had. I told her that I knew she'd been working with David to sabotage my immigration process, and that I had recordings, messages, and even a calendar marking her meetings. Her face went blank for a second. Then she started to scream, screaming at me, calling me paranoid, accusing me of inventing everything. She tried to turn it around, saying I was jealous, that I was just insecure because I couldn't keep up with her. That's when I finally saw her true colors. She looked at me with pure hatred, like I was some obstacle in her way. She spat. "You're just a jealous, insecure little man. You're nothing without me." Honestly, hearing those words felt like a punch in the gut, but I also felt relief. It confirmed what I'd already suspected, that she was just using me, that she'd always been a manipulative, bitchy liar. I realized I'd been in a relationship with someone who had no remorse, no shame. I told her she needed to leave. Not just that night, but forever. I told her I didn't want to see her again, that I was done being played. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I might be broken, I might feel betrayed, but at least now I knew the truth. I knew I had to get away from her, rebuild my life, and make sure she couldn't hurt me or my future again. I couldn't trust her anymore, not after what she'd done. That realization hit hard, but it was also freeing. I was finally stepping out of the darkness she dragged me into. The days that followed were the hardest of my life. I'd made up my mind to cut her out completely, but the emotional wreckage lingered. I'd been betrayed on every level, by her lies, her cheating, her conspiracy against my future. It felt like my entire world had been turned upside down, and I was left trying to piece together what was real and what was just her manipulations. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and I found myself replaying everything over and over again. Her smirks, her lies, the sound of her voice as she denied everything. I had to get out of that house, though. I couldn't stay there with her things, her scent still lingering everywhere. I called a friend, Tom, who's been through a divorce before and knew how to handle this kind of mess. He came over that afternoon and I told him everything. I showed him the videos, the messages, the calendar. He listened intently, then shook his head in disbelief. "Man, she's a piece of work," he said. "You gotta get out of there, move your stuff, and start fresh fast. This is toxic." So I packed a bag and moved into a friend's place temporarily. I didn't want to stay in that house, surrounded by her betrayal. As I was loading the last of my things, I felt this intense pain, like I'd been punched in the gut. It was a visceral feeling, knowing that I'd been so blindsided, so played. I kept thinking about how she lied to my face, how she cheated, and how she'd been working with David to sabotage my immigration process. It made me furious. I kept asking myself, how did I not see it? How did I not feel that something was wrong? I also couldn't help but feel deeply hurt. I'd given her my love, my trust, my whole future, and she'd just thrown it all away for what? Some thrill. An affair. The thought made me sick. I'd been so focused on trying to keep everything together, trying to fix what was broken, that I'd ignored the warning signs. Now all I had left was this bitter realization that I'd been a fool. She was a manipulative, selfish woman who'd used me from start to finish. I knew I had to think about what I was going to do legally, too. I contacted my lawyer, the one who'd been helping with my green card, and I explained everything. I wanted to know my options. Could I press charges? Could I sue her for fraud and conspiracy? The lawyer told me that, depending on the evidence, I might have grounds to take legal action, not just to protect my immigration status, but also to hold her accountable for her actions. That thought made me feel a little bit empowered, even though a part of me just wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. Meanwhile, Lisa didn't waste any time trying to spin her story. She started calling me, sending texts, trying to manipulate me into taking her back. She claimed she was sorry, that she hadn't meant to hurt me, that it was all just a mistake. The classic "I love you, but I made a mistake" bullshit. I didn't even bother replying anymore. I knew her game. She was trying to guilt me, trying to turn me into the bad guy. She'd always been good at twisting things, making herself look innocent while she played her sick little games. One thing I couldn't help but notice was how she kept insisting that her affair with David was just sex, that it meant nothing, that she loved me. But I knew better. I knew that her lies weren't just about the sex. They were about her manipulations, her strategic moves to sabotage my life and our marriage. She lied to my face for months, all while working behind the scenes with her attorney, plotting how to keep her grip on what she wanted. It hurts to admit, but I felt disgusted, not just with her but with myself for ever trusting her. I also started seeing how much her attitude had changed. She became more bitchy, more accusatory. She blamed me for everything, saying I was paranoid, insecure, jealous, and that I was overreacting. Her words echoed in my head, but I knew the truth. I knew she was just trying to maintain control. She didn't want to face the reality of what she'd done, so instead she threw blame at me, spun her lies, and kept her facade intact. I saw through her now. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. As I sat alone in that new place, I started to realize I was at a crossroads. I could try to fix things, push to save what was left of our marriage, or I could walk away, cut my losses, and rebuild from scratch. Honestly, part of me wanted to do the latter. I was tired of her lies, tired of her manipulations. I felt like I'd been drained of every ounce of trust I had left. But I also knew I had to think about my future, about my immigration status, about protecting myself legally. That's when I decided I wasn't going to let her win. I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine, even if it meant breaking away from her completely. Every day since then has been a mix of pain, anger, and a strange sense of relief. I still feel the sting of betrayal, and I don't think I'll get over it overnight. But I've also learned something crucial. That trust is fragile, and when it's broken, you have to rebuild your life from the ground up. I can't change what she did, but I can control what I do next. And I know one thing: I won't let her sabotage me again. Not in my future and not in my life. The weeks that followed felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I was in a constant state of flux, trying to process everything that had happened, deal with the legal mess, and figure out what my next move should be. I spent hours on the phone with my lawyer, who was surprisingly pragmatic about my situation. We discussed the possibility of suing Lisa for fraud, for conspiracy, for intentionally sabotaging my green card application. I knew that the chances of winning weren't guaranteed, but I also knew I needed to send a message. She couldn't get away with what she'd done. As I gathered evidence, I felt a mix of resolve and disgust. I went through her emails, her texts, her online history, anything that could help build my case. Every new piece of proof made me angrier. How she manipulated everyone around her, how she lied so effortlessly. I couldn't believe I'd been so naive, so trusting. I kept replaying the moment I caught her with David, and every time the same rage bubbled up. The betrayal wasn't just about cheating. It was about her working with a man who was supposed to help me, and instead she used him as a tool to destroy my future. Meanwhile, Lisa didn't give up trying to keep me under her spell. She kept calling, begging, crying, trying every trick she knew to get me back. She insisted it was just sex, that it didn't mean anything, and that she still loved me. Of course, I saw right through her. Her words were hollow, her tears fake. She was just desperate, trying to manipulate me into forgiving her so. She could keep her grip on whatever she thought she still had, but I was done being played. No amount of tears or apologies could fix what she'd broken. What hurt the most was how she turned everything around on me. She accused me of being paranoid, jealous, insecure, said I was imagining things, that I was the one messing everything up. It was classic gaslighting. She'd always been good at twisting the truth to make herself look innocent. That bitchy smirk, her sharp tongue, her lies, they all came to mind in those moments. I started to see her for what she was, a manipulative, selfish woman who had zero regard for honesty or fidelity. She used me, lied to my face, and then had the nerve to blame me for her own actions. I also realized I needed to start thinking about my future outside of her. I looked into new housing options, started to rebuild my life slowly but surely. I found comfort in the fact that I had my own independence, that I could stand on my own 2 feet. I enrolled in some classes to improve my skills and boost my chances of getting a good job. I knew I had to be strong, not just for myself, but to make sure she couldn't manipulate me again. She tried to destroy me, but I wasn't going to let that happen. I was coming out of this a different man, more cautious, more aware, and ultimately more determined. One night I sat there, reflecting on everything. I had this realization that I'd been living for her, fighting her battles, trying to fix a relationship that was rotten to the core. I'd been so desperate for love and acceptance that I ignored all the warning signs. Now I saw clearly. I saw her true nature, the bitchy, manipulative, selfish woman she'd always been underneath her fake smiles and manipulative lies. I also saw my own strength. I saw that I could survive this, that I could rebuild my life without her. It was a tough pill to swallow. I'd loved her once, believed in us, believed in the future we planned together. But that love was gone. Like a flame extinguished by her betrayal. I knew I'd carry the scars of this experience for a long time, but I also knew I'd come out the other side stronger. I had to. Because if I didn't, she'd win. And I refused to let her win. I was done with the manipulation, the lies, the betrayal. Moving forward, I'd focus on myself, on rebuilding what she tried to destroy. And I'd never let anyone cheat me out of my future again. Now, looking back, I realize how much this experience has changed me. Though it's been brutal, it's also made me stronger in ways I never expected. I finally started to piece my life back together, step by step. I cut all ties with Lisa completely. I blocked her number, her email, everything that connected me to her. I didn't want her to have any power over me anymore. The legal proceedings took some time, but with the evidence I gathered, I managed to push through a claim against her for fraud and conspiracy. It's not about revenge anymore. It's about protecting myself from people like her who manipulate and destroy others for their own selfish ends. Through all of this, I've learned some hard lessons. Trust is fragile, and it's earned, not given. I was naive in believing that love alone could sustain a marriage, especially with someone as manipulative as Lisa. I learned that sometimes people are willing to sabotage your entire life just to get what they want, whether it's sex, money, or just the thrill of betrayal. I also learned the importance of paying attention to the little signs, no matter how uncomfortable or inconvenient they might be. Ignoring red flags only makes the fall worse when everything comes crashing down. Most importantly, I've come to accept that I can't control other people's actions, but I can control how I respond. I chose to walk away from her, from all the lies and heartbreak, and focus on rebuilding my life. I found a new apartment, started working on my career, and even signed up for some therapy to help me deal with the emotional fallout. It's been a long road, and I still have days when I feel angry or betrayed, but overall, I've started to feel like I'm reclaiming my life. This whole mess has taught me to value myself more, to trust my instincts, and to never ignore my gut feelings again. I know now that I deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect, and I won't settle for anything less. I hope sharing this story might help others see the warning signs sooner and understand that no matter how much you love someone, you can't fix a toxic relationship by yourself. Sometimes, walking away is the bravest thing you can do. So, to anyone out there who's going through something similar, trust yourself. Don't let anyone manipulate or lie to you just because you want to believe in the best in people. Your future is too important. Protect it. Love yourself enough to walk away from the lies, the betrayal, and the people who don't deserve your trust. Because at the end of the day, the only person who's going to be there for you forever is yourself. And if you stand up for yourself, you'll come out stronger on the other side, just like I finally did.